In February of 2012, R&K Distributing created a new product and made it available called Appli-Stitch. And this new product is a very exciting new product, and especially for somebody like me who really loves to do applique and tackle twill, this was very exciting to me. Mainly because, you know, a lot of people when they do applique, one of the frustrations that they have is that if you don't own a cutter, or if you know a cutting machine, or if you do designs, applique designs, and you choose to cut the material after you sew it on, it can be very frustrating and it can take a lot of time. Many people will actually cut material before they put it into a design. And in order to do that, you have to have some way of kind of adhering it to the garment or the material that you're going to place it onto. And so that requires you to do quite a few different steps. And the unique thing about the Appli-Stitch is it's specifically designed to tear away from around a satin stitch border. And so instead of having to cut this material at all, it literally, you do a dense satin stitch and it will actually perforate the material. Then it will make it so that you can easily just peel it away after you're done sewing. And so it's really exciting, really innovative, new, exclusive new product of R&K Distributing. And with the introduction of the Appli-Stitch material, we also received an update inside of the software that has a new Appli-Stitch tool. And this Appli-Stitch tool is located right next to your applique tool. And it's this little blue icon. And the really neat and exciting thing about the Appli-Stitch tool is that it does all the work for you, basically. You do a lot of things similar to what you do in applique, but there's a special part of the design that requires you to do an extra step, and what this tool does is it will automatically do it for you. And so I want to go ahead and show you this Appli-Stitch tool and how it works. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Appli-Stitch tool, and I'm going to come into my design here, and I'm just going to create a little box. Let's just say I was going to put a little box of Appli-Stitch on a design somewhere. And this isn't a perfect one, but I'm going to go ahead and right click, and you'll see that it actually created this satin stitch border. And you'll notice a new little stitch, and this is what we call a trapping stitch. And there's a very specific reason why this stitch is there. But before I get into that, I'm going to go ahead and show you on the properties box what it looks like. Up here in the properties box, you'll notice it's very similar to the applique tool. You're going to be able to define the width of your satin stitch border, and you're going to have the stitch length, which doesn't really apply to you know, satin stitch, but what this applies to is the length of the stitch for like this trapping stitch right here, or a placement stitch that will be done. And then you have the density. You'll notice that there's a density setting of 0.27. This is a very dense satin stitch, and the reason for that is we need it to cut or perforate the material. So we need it to be about 0.27 to 0.3 millimeters in density, and if you don't do it at that, it'll be very hard to peel the material away. So we need this nice 0.27 millimeter density satin stitch border. And then you have a couple other things like the angle of the stitches. If you're going to go around a corner, you can tell it at what point you want it to activate, like a square or extending out. And so you can play with those when you're working with a design, and it's just how, at what point it goes and makes a change to how it corners. You'll notice that you have a placement line, and a placement line is the first line that gets sewn on, and what it is it's an actual, it's the size of the design. And then you have a tack down line, which is a line that actually is the first time that it actually locks the material down to the fabric or the garment, and so it locks that Appli-Stitch fabric down to your garment, and so that's a very important stitch. And then you have what we call the trapping line, and this trapping line is located right here. And what the trapping line is for is, as we've stated with the Appli-Stitch, that this tight, dense border right here will actually cut the material and make it easy to peel off. So if we're gonna have this satin stitch border, you know a satin stitch goes side to side. So if it's gonna cut the material along this outside border, it would also cut the material along the inside border. And so what this trapping stitch does is it runs right along just inside of it, and what it does is it locks that material back down to the fabric so that it will not peel off from the inside. So it traps the material on the inside of the border, and that's why we call it the trapping stitch. Because like I said, if we didn't have that trapping line there, it would literally, the fabric would be able to peel out from the inside. So it's very important to have this trapping line, and by default it's set at 2.5 millimeters, and that's 2.5 millimeters from the placement line. And so let's go ahead and do a slow redraw so you can get a better idea for this Appli-Stitch. Go to View, Slow Redraw. Okay, so we're going to get going the design. As you know, I said that there was a placement stitch, and this is the placement stitch right here. And when it gets to the end, what will happen is there'll actually be a stop that takes place in the design, and it lets you to go, and you're at this point going to lay the material down onto this little line, and you want to make sure you have at least a ½ inch of material left on each side of this placement line, because you're going to need to make sure you got enough fabric down so you can tear it away at the end, and a ½ inch to 1 inch. So for those of you who actually do cut the fabric, you know, just as into a square before doing it, you got to give yourself a ½ inch to 1 inch excess around the edges. So then after you do that placement stitch and you lay your fabric down, it's going to come in, it's going to sew. This is the first tack down line, which is actually going to lock the material to the fabric, and then it's going to jump in and do your trapping stitch. And you want to do your trapping stitch before the border, so it's just showing you that automatically the software is going to create this for you. And once it gets done with this trapping line, it's going to jump into your border. And so now it's going to come in and it's going to do your border stitch. And so this is what Appli-Stitch is. It's a little bit different. The way that it's different from Applique is that it's going to have this trapping line. And the important thing to know is that if you were going to, after this point, you were going to, let's say, put a little design in here, you're going to have to trap that design too. So if it's a satin stitch or a fill stitch, you're going to have to trap it. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of create a ellipse here in the middle, and I'm going to go ahead and just right click on it, and I'm going to convert it to, let's say, just a fill stitch. So let's say that after you did this Appli-Stitch, you wanted to have this fill stitch in there. Because Appli-Stitch will tear away, you'll want to make sure that anytime you do a satin stitch or a fill stitch on top of the material after you've kind of sewn it in, you're going to want to go ahead and border it again. And the easiest way to do that is to come back in and you grab a run stitch, and you're just going to go around your design, and you want it to be about 1 millimeter away, you know, from the object. And you're just going to come in here and you're going to create this little trapping stitch, and it's pretty simple to do. But what this will do is it'll make sure that the material is not going to come up and out from around this fill stitch. So it's going to trap that material in so in the event that this fill stitch actually cut the material. So this is a little trapping line. So anytime you do anything, even if I came in and I wanted a little satin stitch in here. I know this is just kind of a very generic design here, but I would need to come in again and border this with a run stitch so that I make sure that it traps that material in so that it will not come apart from this satin stitch and raise up. So that's just the little tricks that you need to do with your Appli-Stitch. It's really simple. I love this Appli-Stitch tool. You have a lot of control with it. You know, having the ability to come into your properties box and you know, make the different adjustments is really handy and nice. And the important thing to know is that this default density, go ahead and keep it the same. You don't really need to change it. If you did, you could do 0.3 at the most, but you want to make sure it's a nice dense satin stitch, and then you want to make sure that your trapping line is on the inside of the border, and you want it to come around, and you typically want it between 1 and 2 millimeters away from the border so that it locks that material in so it won't tear away. And again, if you decide to put anything in the middle, regardless if it's a fill or a satin, you're going to want to come back in and create a run stitch to trap that material. Again, that's so that it does not peel away from this fill stitch. So that's how you work with the Appli-Stitch. It's pretty simple. There are a couple little tricks and neat things that you can do. Like, for example, you can come in and import true type text. So let's say I did the letter F here, and I went in. I want to come in here and I want to do, let's say, a black, really bold letter F at size 300. Hit apply, hit OK. I'm just, for the heck of it, going to resize this a little bit, make it a pretty good size design. You can actually right click on artwork and convert it to Appli-Stitch, and looky there, you've just created an Appli-Stitch letter, and it looks really good, and you'll be able to utilize that. So you can kind of play around whatever fonts you have loaded into your computer. You'll be able to access through your true type text. So everybody might have different fonts available, so you kind of have to just pick your own and find one that you like and utilize it. So it's very simple and easy to work with. The fact that you can work with true type lettering is great. It really helps to allow you to do like custom lettering and things like that. So make sure that you check out the Appli-Stitch because it's a lot of fun. And one of the other things I want to point out really quick with it is that if you go into your commands tab, once you have Appli-Stitch selected, you will notice that there are you have this fabric option down at the bottom, and you'll notice all these that start with this AS. That stands for Appli-Stitch. And so what R&K Distributing has done is they have actually listed all the colors and the styles of Appli-Stitch material that is available in here, and they're actually images of the material itself. So if you come in and you choose let's say dark blue velvet and hit apply, it's actually going to put the dark blue velvet inside, and you can notice the graininess of this. It's the fuzzy part of the velvet material. It's really neat. And let's come back in here and let's choose a different one. You have glitter, so let's go to like the let's see, blue glitter here and hit apply, and you'll notice that the blue glitter, and just so you know, that blue glitter is all of the glitter is amazing looking. It looks even much better than what you see on the screen here. It's probably the most popular of all the different Appli-Stitch materials. And for those of you who work with sports, there's some great leather. It's really, a faux leather or a fake leather, but they have like a dark brown and they have a really light tan color. It is amazing. It looks and feels just like leather. It's really soft and plush, and it tears away really easily, so you can imagine a football or something like that done with this leather material. Also, you do have in here an Appli-Stitch back of leather, and because brown and tan are the only options, but if you flip over the brown leather, it actually gives you the look of a black leather, and so it's kind of like a 2-for-1. When you buy the brown leather, it'll work as a brown leather, or flip it over and it works as like a black leather. And the other really neat things with it are each one of these you kind of have a back side too, but if you use the white velvet, you will notice that on it you can actually flip it over and it looks like a baseball, or it's kind of a soft vinyl look that it has, so it'll look like a baseball or a volleyball or anything like that. So you can get really creative with sports stuff. It's just a really neat product, and the fact that the Appli-Stitch tool was created is just amazing. It makes creating Appli-Stitch designs super easy, and it allows you to get really creative. And so definitely check it out, and go and get some of the material and play around with it, because it's a lot of fun. If you enjoy doing applique or tackle twill as much as I do, you will absolutely love this product, and you get used to it and you can't imagine not having it. It's just one of those really neat new inventions that is really exciting and makes doing applique a lot of fun.